Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
It's the end of an era.
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and I'd like my life model decoy to have extra large man boobs, please.
Extra large, not just the regular, extra. And we're here to give you guys a little bit extra, as we do every month, because it is Patreon support time, everybody. Every month, our Patreon supporters, even if you're at the $1 level on up, you get to choose what movie we watch. And this time, here were the choices that we had to choose from. Let's remind ourselves. We had a movie called Avengers Grimm, which is pretty much just the Asylum version of the Avengers without trying to get sued.
With Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah. We have the Spider-Man live-action TV show. We still haven't covered all that, despite one of the people saying, didn't you guys cover that already? There's more of that out there. Captain America 2, A Death Too Soon. But sadly, boys, this is, like as Sean said, the end of an era. The meme is dead, and our Patreon supporters said this meme must go. So today we're covering Surrogates from 2006 off the top of my head.
That's when the comic was written. I think the movie's 2009.
2009. Well, what is it? What is a 6 if not an upside down 9? Yes.
And I'm just gonna put this out there. I have been Pete positive for all of 2019 so far with everything that we've done. It feels like that streak ends today.
So
not mine.
But we do want to thank I don't know if we want to thank everybody. We want to thank them for their support. Let's put it that way. We'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for the support. And do we thank them for this movie? We'll wait to the end to find out. I think Sean's played his hand a little bit.
No.
They've just made my job a lot harder for every month when we all try to suggest something to vote on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if anything else, congratulations, you've given us more work. Well, as Sean has implemented on the last episode, we've got some new stuff here. We've got new ideas for you, and we'd like to have you listen to Bruce's trailer,
the fake trailer,
here for what's the name of it? Surrogates.
Surrogates.
Here we go. If it wants to play.
In a world where Bruce Willis can actually stand, walk, and wear a bad wig, it's Blade Runner meets The Matrix meets Hudson Hawk. Strap in for a non-stop thrill ride. It's Die Hard with androids. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Robot. It's Bionic Woman meets the Stepford Wives meets a Seagram's wine cooler commercial. From the executive producer of Hancock and the director of Beverly Hills Body Snatcher. It's Westworld meets the Westworld TV show meets Billy Bathgate. Brought to you by the guy who married Elizabeth Banks. Nice snag, by the way, Mr. Handelman. It's the episode of Family Matters when Urkel builds a robot Urkel meets one of those episodes of Friends where Bruce Willis shows up. Co-starring the Bond girl from Die Another Day. It's the Terminator meets Short Circuit meets the whole 10 yards. Featuring Golden Globe winner and future voice of Arby's, Ving Rhames as the Prophet. It's Sixth Sense meets iRobot meets Mission Impossible 2. Based on the acclaimed comic book so good we call it a graphic novel in the credits. Do you like Nicole Kidman? Well, this movie doesn't have Nicole Kidman, but it does have James Cromwell. And everyone knows that James Cromwell is the guy you get when you don't have Nicole Kidman. Featuring the music of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania's favorite band, Breaking Benjamin. the pulse-pounding adventure that's been called Runaway with less Magnum PI and more moonlighting. It's the film critics have called competently made, relatively predictable, and slickly presented. Comic book expert Bruce Leslie says, it's better than the Ed Norton Hulk movie. Surrogates! If you can't make it to the theater, send your surrogate.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
How you feeling about that decision you made there now?
Well, it bowled me over that Bruce produced something that's like 15 minutes too long, but it's still great. It's still good.
you just get there, you get to the halfway point, and you're just like, oh, wait a minute, this is only halfway? You've got to be putting me on.
Still going, huh? But it's very good. I do like it a lot. And the best part is it was like, as everybody knows, you get James Cromwell. That's the best part when you can't get Nicole Kidman.
All right. Like I said, this movie's from 2009. Here's the IMDb plotline. Set in a futuristic world where humans live in isolation to interact through surrogate robots.
Of a middle finger.
A cop is forced to leave his home for the first time in years in order to investigate the murder of surrogates. Well, I know you just heard Bruce Leslie talk for the last 45 minutes, but if I could find where my stupid mouse is so I could click the flipping button, just go to your comic book connection. Perfect.
The Surrogates is a 2005 comic book series published by Top Shelf and written by Robert Venditti. Robert Venditti is probably better known for his relaunch of Exo Man of War for Valiant about 7 years ago, or being the person who had the unenviable task of taking over Green Lantern after Jeff Johns stepped down for the book. He's also doing the nigh impossible right now by writing a Hawkman comic that takes the character's nearly incomprehensible history and is turning it into something that makes sense. But Surrogates is the series with which he first caught the comic book industry's eye. But before Top Shelf published the miniseries, Robert Venditti was actually working in their warehouse. This is one of those old school comic book stories, like in the 70s when a writer got sick and they would ask the pizza delivery guy if he wanted to write a couple of issues. Comics is great for this. Actually, probably the last legitimate creative industry in which this kind of stuff still happens. Heck, I even heard of a guy who was asked to write a story just because an editor liked his podcast. Ain't that crazy?
Insane.
Anyway, while working in the Top Shelf warehouse circa 2002, Venditti pitched the idea of the Surrogates to publisher Chris Startz, and I imagine the response was something like this. Rob, you're really good at stacking boxes in a semi-organized fashion, so why the heck not? Let's fry this fish. But don't get your hopes up. It's not like they're going to make a movie of it or anything. I mean, we're publishing Alan Moore. Nobody's going to notice you. Wait till they get a load of that Lost Girls book he's working on. Ay, caramba. It's going to land us all in prison, I tell you. End quote. That's right, listeners. It always comes back to Alan Moore. Venditti was inspired to write The Surrogates after reading Indra Senna's book, The Cyber Gypsies, about numerous individuals who lost their spouses or their jobs due to their addiction to the internet and their online personas. In an interview, Venditti said, "It dawned on me that if you were somehow able to create a persona and send it out into the real world where it could go to work for you and run your errands and so on, then you would never have to go back to being yourself," end quote. Now, thanks to both my pharmacy and my grocery store making deliveries now, I'm only a work-from-home job away from living this dream as it is. But set in the year 2054, approximately 99 years after the Fish Under the Sea dance where Martin Barry became a rock superstar, people use surrogates in their daily lives and interactions with one another. And if for some reason you don't happen to already know this, surrogates are androids with this virtual reality interface or something like that. In this city called Central Georgia Metropolis, which I assume must be Atlanta, there's a guy named Lieutenant Harvey Greer who investigates the destruction of two surrogates. It turns out a shadowy individual called Steeplejack hopes to permanently disable all surrogates in order to eliminate people's dependence on them. The anti-surrogate religious leader named the Prophet is a suspect, but the Prophet is later killed by Steeplejack. Greer slowly starts to sympathize with the anti-surrogate sentiment as his investigation continues, and Greer chooses to work the investigation in person rather than via surrogate after Steeplejack destroys Greer's work surrogate. And the investigator later discovers a shocking twist. Steeplejack himself is a surrogate controlled by Lionel Cantor, the inventor of the original surrogate. Lionel designed surrogates as a tool for physically impaired, physically challenged, or handicapped individuals, and he became dissatisfied when they were appropriated for personal use by the non-impaired. Eventually, Lionel successfully disables surrogates throughout the city. Greer later discovers that his wife, a lady named Margaret, who was a surrogate addict, actually committed suicide because her surrogate was disabled. So as you can see, the movie strayed somewhat from the story of the comic, mainly by dodging Ms. Greer's suicide. But I suppose the question remains, did they make the story a little worse or a whole lot worse?
Well, I think Sean's already tipped his hand at everything.
Put me in, coach. Put me in, coach.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Koufax, what have you to say about the movie Surrogates?
All right. So if I was going to have a quote for the poster of Surrogates, this is what it would be. If I ever had a secret I didn't want anyone to know, I would put it into the middle of the movie Surrogates because no one would ever remember it. That is exactly what this movie is. I have seen this movie now, I think twice. It might have been more than twice. I already forget 90% of this movie because that is the problem with this movie. It is competent. It is my least favorite kind of movie. Like, this movie is everything that is a massive bummer to me.
I watched it because I thought it was that movie where Tina Fey wanted Amy Poehler to have a baby for her.
That's Baby Mama.
That's a pretty good movie.
This movie is such a massive bummer to me because it's one of those things where it has all the promise in the world. You know, you have Bruce Willis, who, you know, can go either way on a movie. Mm-hmm. You have pretty cool source material. It seems like hard sci-fi, which I really dig. I usually have a good time with that kind of movie. And every single thing about this movie is a massive bummer. Whether it's how boring the plotting is of this movie, how dour everything is, there is nothing fun about watching this movie at all. And I can't tell you how long it is, but it feels like you're watching it for 7 days.
Well, I've got a couple things to say about it. First off, I guess I want to start with Bruce Willis, but I don't know how you feel about the idea of Bruce Willis playing both the real life person and the surrogate. Like, I think to make this movie, you ought to have somebody else playing the surrogate. But if you are going to have the same person playing both, how many wigs do you think they tried out before they decided that horrible, like it's about 60% Mo Howard and about like 30% Wall Street, and I don't know what the rest is.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that it's his 12 Monkeys wig. I really do. I think it's his 12 Monkeys wig, handy. And he was like, "Yep, that's the one I want."
Look, I got this one in the trunk of my car. We can just use it.
That's yet another problem with this, is that, you know, there is so very little that's different about like the real guy versus his surrogate, that it's laughably terrible.
To me, that really, okay, not for nothing, but like, you know, I kind of thought about like their process to how they were doing this and everything, and you're absolutely correct. But you do have to sell that part, and I think you're also correct in that today's Bruce Willis would have had somebody else play that surrogate's role, and he'd have just been sitting in that chair the whole time. I think this is what started that off, and he just went, "Oh, hey, if I got the other guy to play this, I could have just been sitting this whole time. It would have been really sweet." So I think this is where that really started. But I think this is a character thing in a way, just really showing you who this guy is and the fact that he's not doing the surrogate bit for vanity or anything of that particular nature. He wants to still kind of be true to himself, and I think that little tiny root being still in there is something that, you know, kind of helps inform the character a little bit. Is it great? Is like the hair and stuff great? Of course not. That's ridiculous.
But the guy's been sitting there in a room for how many years, and there's no difference between him and the surrogate except for his wig. It's
and they
ridiculous.
they really need to do a thing where they have like maybe you have Bruce Willis play the surrogate, but then you need somebody like Skinny Bane to play the actual operator.
Or
you really got to
a
make it work.
a massively fat person. Basically, Wally has done this far better than this movie. It does it.
And you know who does it better than that? Neville, Dean, and Taylor in a little movie called Gamer.
And I should have put that in there. It's Gamer meets Wally meets. I don't know.
You did need a few more of those in there, Bruce, for sure.
Yeah, I know. I felt like I cut it
if
short.
anything, it was too brisk.
But and also it sort of undercuts the story with him and his wife, because it's easy for him to come out into the meat space and to walk around as his fleshy self when he looks pretty much like his surrogate, but then they really rough her up for how she looks compared to her surrogate.
Very true. Now, she wasn't an accident, but I'll say this. One of the things that I do like about this movie is the makeup jobs, because the makeup jobs do a pretty decent job in differentiating who is a human, who is a surrogate. Like when you meet the guy who is, the fat guy that's in the little, the cubicle, your oracle, if you will, you can tell just by looking at him, not the fact that he's a big fat guy, but the fact that, he doesn't have that, robot patina on and everything. He's a human just by looking at him. And I thought that was a good choice.
Nobody's buying that for their surrogate. I mean, let's just put it out there, man. Other than me, nobody's buying that for their surrogate. I want to do like reverse psychology. I want people to be impressed by the real me compared to my surrogate.
That's not a bad plan, and I'm sure there's somebody in there that's just like, I'm just going to get the biggest uggo I can.
I'm going to play the human version. They're going to get Dan Harmon to play my surrogate, and that's how we're going to do
it. You walk out and they're like, my God, wow, handsome.
But they also failed to play around with the possibilities of having a surrogate in here, too. I mean, they sort of hint at it, that one part where Bruce Willis tells the lady, for all he knows, it's some guy in his operating table with his you-know-what out or something like that.
Yeah.
But they never actually had a character who decided to use the surrogate to express their gender identity differently than what would have been expected from traditional Hollywood. Also, we saw a couple of people with spikes in their shoulders just briefly, but I would expect that to be a bigger deal. Like, where's the person with the donkey head and stuff? Like right. I really think they should have played around with that.
Where is the reptilian man?
Yeah,
you're right. And, today somebody would be a velociraptor. You're not wrong.
Exactly.
Or at least, I mean, even practical decisions like 4 arms or 3 arms instead of 2.
I mean, look, like there's so many problems with this movie, and it's nothing. There's nothing fun about pointing out what they've done wrong. I mean, the plotting is like, it's a completely forgettable thing. It is literally why it's my least favorite kind of movie, is that you have all of this high-minded ideals before you go into it. Let me go backwards for a second, because I've already said all this. So Bruce, I'm pretty sure that you already know how many times you've seen this movie, because you know the guy who wrote the comic book. Is that right?
I've met the guy. Don't know the guy. I've met him. He's super approachable, super nice, a good guy. Wish him all the best.
But so as do I, and I think that they did him a disservice with this movie. But Adam, can you tell me how many times you've seen this movie?
This one will make twice.
Oh, so you've only seen it twice? Okay.
To my recollection, I mean, I saw it in the theater when it originally came out, and I saw it this time.
It's the problem with this movie, though, is that it's vanilla nothingness, and it feels like one of those things where, like, man, I couldn't tell you anything about it a week from now. I know Bruce Willis is in it. I know that he kills all of the robots at the end. That's all I know. Like, I couldn't tell you anything else about it in a week from now. I totally forgot everybody who's in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got one twist that they execute poorly. I mean, the twist that the leader of the anti-surrogate group is a surrogate, which,
right.
I mean, that's kind of, you got to have that twist. There's no way around that twist. So simply having the twist isn't enough. You really got to execute it well by having to spend more time with this guy, really feeling this guy need to play up there's some kind of emotional connection almost between him and Bruce Willis, and make that reveal pay off a little bit better, but it's kind of unsatisfying when it finally does pay off.
And that's another problem with this thing, is that there's nothing surprising. If you hear that there is a movie about people who have robot surrogates out in the real world, immediately something comes into your head That is what this movie is. There is no new ideas. They bring nothing new to the table except for everything that you already know what's going to happen. And it's just so boring.
And they toy around a little bit with the idea that the surrogates kind of have superpowers. Like there's a scene where the lady's like jumping over cars and stuff. There's a couple of scenes when Bruce Willis's surrogate has its arm ripped off where he's doing some amazing stuff. But for the most part, they don't really play with that. I mean, you could do some amazing surrogate on surrogate battles and stuff, and they don't really lean into that very much either.
Or even when he is just a regular dude and you see just how much stronger the surrogates are than him, you only see one moment of that. There's not even like, I mean, they could punch a hole through him and they don't. They decide to shake his hand hard. And like that's literally what they do. And that is such a bad choice.
And like the comic kind of plays up the noir aspect, and it has more of a Blade Runner influence perhaps, and it's entirely too like sunshiny and pretty, and the weather's all nice. I mean, they could have had fun with this where it's like surrogates are so commonplace that they're not really even the key part of the movie. You know what I mean? Like with Blade Runner, yeah, there's replicants out there, but it's not a movie. Just like, look how cool replicants are.
It would almost be better to have this thing, like you say, to make it a bright, shiny day every day, and it's basically Stepford Wives, but with robots. Like or I guess that is what Stepford Wives is. But that's a way better idea. That is a way more interesting movie than what we have here.
Yeah. And I think another thing that really drags this movie down, the concept was pitched in 2002 for a comic book. The comic book took a few years to get published, took a few years of development for the movie to come out. But by the time this movie had come out, most hard sci-fi people, most folks that fancy themselves as a speculative fiction fan or a futurist, our idea of the future is moving to a post-physical existence where the Matrix is way closer to what we would expect than actually having clunky robots. And not only having robots out there, but they're not even like replicant or life model decoy quality. I mean, you peel back their face, they look like the creatures from They Live.
Yeah. And there's also another aspect to this, which you just reminded me of, which is that anything for the next 10 years, if you don't have a different idea than the Matrix, like you're boned, you're screwed. And there's a bunch of movies that, and some of them are actually good. Like I think I, Robot is a fun movie. Like there's something interesting and cool about that movie. Or like Minority Report is another one of those movies where you're like, wow, Minority Report is actually secretly a great movie.
And even like what makes Westworld and Blade Runner work is the concept of when does sentience occur? Like when do you stop being artificial intelligence and just being intelligence? But they take all that out by having these really just be avatars for people. I mean, this is no different than VR chat, only it's in meat space instead of cyberspace.
And who doesn't want to shoot Yul Brynner? We all do.
Or Cyclops. I like to shoot that guy.
I want to dance with Yul Brynner like she does in Future World. Anyway, there's all of the choices here. Every move that is made is good enough that it's not hilarious.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You can't really laugh at it for being just incompetent or anything.
Right, because it's not incompetent.
This is a very, light story-wise, whatever, like from a craft perspective, it's a very competently made film.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's always a good sign when a reviewer says it's competently made.
Which was an actual pull
quote. It's competently made.
They showed up for work every day and gave us something at the end. Yay!
There were some ideas to play with in the movie. The comic works a little bit better too, because in the comic you kind of it came out a little early, which has something to do with it. But in the comic you get to use your mind's eye a little bit more than you do in the movie, and take the sort of tone into it. You don't have to have the line deliveries as they're given to you. You can hear it in what works best for you. And also with the comics, you can kind of go into it with, okay, this is a high concept thing where we're not supposed to see this as an actual possible future. This is just a setting in which to tell a story. But here it's like they're trying to sell us on this is what the future could realistically be like in a time where we just know that the future would not, would be post-physical, like I said before.
I did look at one of those Chevys and be like, really? This is what we're still driving in the future? That car's ugly.
I'm really racking my brain here trying to think of something to recommend it. And the best I can come up with is it isn't awful.
Well, I would say, regardless of what sort of person you enjoy leering at, there's a lot of beefcakes and cheesecakes.
I will say that's something that I wanted to point out. There are holy cow, the casting director for this is just like, bring me all of the beautiful people. Make sure that I can see all, like, oh, what a dream.
If they're acting as stiff, that's a plus.
Doesn't even matter. They're a surrogate, so it's all good. Just send me all the pretty people, and there are a lot of pretty people in this film. This is the most handsome police captain you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
man.
they're all usually just grizzled old men smoking cigarettes. You just got this tall, dude that's just like, hello, I'm very just debonair, and you're like, geez.
It could have used a couple creepy scenes, like where a surrogate pops their head back and like some weird tentacle like robotic arms come out and
I thought you were
undo
going
a
to
lock
say
or
Pez.
something. Or Pez would be good too.
Even smaller stuff, like smaller world stuff, like what does a boxing match look like with surrogates? Like, what does a football game look like with surrogates?
We have gone beyond all football and sports needs.
I mean,
they hint at that a little bit. They show us the military version of the surrogates. But then I'm starting to think, if you could have these robots that can go to war and can do the work, do you really even need humans tied to them? Like, couldn't one person maybe operate 10 surrogates to save money or something
Again,
like that?
I think that's something that that definitely goes down. It's a good point, and I think it goes down to really just them not ironing out the lore well enough, because that makes a good point.
Yeah, and it sort of undercuts the story all of a sudden too.
But literally, you throw that in, you fix that by just going like, oh, the robots could not, function. We tested it out and they couldn't function without an actual human brain. Literally, it's like a 2-line solved problem, but you didn't do it.
And the comic book really kind of touches on this idea that there can be. I'm trying to think of a good comparison to it, but like there can be a breakthrough in medicine or surgery that helps people that are at a disadvantage, and then people who have money want to go from average to above average rather than trying to fix an actual problem, and it gets appropriated and drives up the cost and makes it more difficult for the folks that need it to get their hands on it. Something like even as simple as Botox falls into that category. That when you're competing with the commercial market, there are folks that can get medical benefits from something. The price is driven up. It all becomes this weird thing. And the comic kind of touches on that. Like, the whole idea of surrogates was so that a paraplegic or quadriplegic person, actually shockingly similar to the plot of Detective Pikachu, but the whole idea is this was something that was created to help people with disabilities, and then it gets appropriated by folks who just think it's a better way to live their lives, and all of a sudden it becomes harder for the folks who really need it to get what they need.
Okay, so here's one. Here, I just thought of a good thing about this movie. I just thought of a good one, which is that if you want to know what Ving Rhames would have looked like in Rogue One, in the Forrest Whitaker role,
here you go.
This is the movie.
Take him out of that costume, put him in a cool dashiki.
Is what he would have done in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yep, I think you hit the nail on the head.
I totally forgot he was in it, and that's part of the problem with this movie, is that there's a lot of good people in it.
Or if you want to know what Ving Rhames would have looked like in the role of Stella in Stella Got Her Groove Back, very similar hair.
Also true.
Oh, I'd watch that movie so much.
Very different movie.
Yes, I like it. See, now we found something to recommend.
Empowerment. It would be more like the fans of RuPaul's Drag Race.
But the two concepts that were played on better in the comics, I think, than in the movie was the whole idea that this was created to help people, and it was stolen essentially by fully able people who just wanted to be lazy. I mean, it would be like if you got some of those things for disabled veterans that help them move their legs when they have issues with their lower legs, and you just got them because you get tired of standing on walking a lot.
And here I am using my legs like a sucker.
So Adam, name something that you like from this movie.
Listen, I like the whole conceit of it. The idea is actually very, very neat and interesting to me. The execution is not the best. You are absolutely correct. The idea, the germ of the story, definitely does work for me. And I remember seeing this movie in the theater, and I remember liking it in the theater. Now, I almost purchased the Blu-ray just to be like, I liked it in the theater. It's been a decade. Why not just pick it up? And I didn't, just because it probably would have taken like a day longer shipping than I really wanted it to. So I didn't, and I watched it online and everything, and I'm glad I didn't make that purchase. Not that, it's not a movie. I think you're absolutely right, Sean. This is not a movie worth having because it's not a movie necessarily worth remembering because there's not a lot of
But the
remembrance
director's commentary makes it so much better. You should have picked up that Blu-ray.
It would have been like Bruce Willis does nothing but want to sit all day long.
You get a much more sound sleep when the director commentary is on during the movie.
I will say this, though, because I looked it up. This came out the exact same year as Gamer, and you know what movie I do own on Blu-ray? Gamer. So
Gamer.
There you go.
Now, I like the idea when they had Lionel, the main guy, the guy that invented surrogates, show up as a little kid so you wouldn't know who he was. I think they should have had him almost, since he created the technology, maybe put some kind of secret back door so he's just showing up wherever he wants, like you're talking to a person, suddenly they turn into Lionel, then go back to that person. I think they could have played with that a little bit.
Sounds an awful lot like a movie the three of us kind of came up with, and we abandoned, but sounds an awful lot like something we've all kind of sort of thought about and wrote it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It was a heck of an idea, too. Yeah. We need to get back to that.
Maybe one day the HMP audience will know, but not until then. Look, James Cromwell's really good. I wish he was in it maybe a little bit more.
I forget how great a dirtbag that guy plays.
He does.
In my head, the first two things I think about with James Cromwell, of course, are Babe and First Contact, Star Trek First Contact. Mm-hmm. But he really does play just a terrific dirtbag.
He's played a lot of scummy guys over the years, for sure.
I'll tell you something else I liked. Was a scene in particular when his wife is hanging out with all the beautiful, attractive surrogates, and he's stuck in his flesh suit because he no longer has his functioning surrogate. And he actually uses his own two meaty hands to just beat the heck out of that surrogate. And I could just kind of vicariously feel the satisfaction in him and his frustration mounting. And I really like that scene. And they're all doing some kind of surrogate drugs in his living room. I don't exactly know how that works physiologically, but apparently surrogates would get a buzz that they must communicate back to their operator, or what's the point? I don't know.
Nitrous.
Yeah. Blue nitrous. It was the blue meth of the surrogate world.
It was weird. It looked like a kind of a half bong or something that electrocutes them. It's really bizarre. But I thought that would, again, I think that's an interesting point, a little addition to that story. You don't necessarily need that there overall. You really don't. You can take that out and it doesn't mean anything. But if you keep it in there, it essentially that's pretty much saying, hey, look, these people, they are trapped in these robots, so to speak. They don't really go out. They don't really feel anything. So, overall. So they have to do this stuff to, raise up the levels and everything. I mean, like when Bruce Willis finally, leaves his house and everything and walks out, they're like, oh, you need something for the anxiety, just on account of you don't know what it's like to be outside.
I'm also kind of surprised they didn't, and I'm not saying that they should have, I'm just surprised they didn't give us some kind of flashback scene to the death of the child or try to shoehorn some kind of parallel where the death of the child lines up almost perfectly with whatever the final moral of the story is or something. But they really just let that honestly be in the background rather well.
Yeah, they didn't hit it home. They didn't ride it to death for sentimentality reasons or anything, and I thought that was a change of pace from what I think we would normally see.
Yeah, but I first time I ever watched this, I really expected the scene to be where either a surrogate was to blame for the child's death or a surrogate could have prevented the child's death, something to explain why the wife had become so addicted to surrogates.
That'd be that's like, well, why do people get addicted to, say alcohol? It's because they don't want to feel anymore and they want to just be able to hide behind,
Yeah. Exactly. They left a little bit of mystery there, which I think was one good decision they made. Also, the comic culminates with the suicide of his wife because she can't handle life without surrogates. This movie did not earn that ending, so I'm glad they didn't try to go with it. Like, you kind of got to earn that, and I don't feel like they did.
Well, we
so
never
I'm
really
glad
spend
they
a lot of
didn't do
time
that.
with her proper as opposed to her surrogate, which we are with 98% of the time, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a choice because she hasn't left her operator seat since the child died in the comics.
Oh, and also since I saw this movie, Rosamund Pike actually became a star. She wasn't
she a star before this?
Not to the level we know who she is now. Like back in 2009, she didn't really. Not that I could.
Because it was post Bond girl. I always think you get a certain level.
Yeah,
of
but
stardom
Halle
just
Berry
being a
was the Bond girl in that flick.
You're right, man. You're right.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. That's the one walking out in that bathing suit and all that jazz. That's what people wanted.
She put the jinx on me, I tell you.
Indeed. Ving Rhames, you're right. He's absolutely underused. I wish that character would have been developed more. You do, I guess. They could justify it in their staff meetings and stuff, going like, well, there is the switcheroo, and you don't want to spend too much time with this. But I thought the overall idea of Cromwell's character actually, piloting this one, and I thought that was pretty cool. I've created this thing to help humanity, and this feels like something that very much could happen. I mean, nuclear bomb. I've created something that can help humanity, and it dooms it.
I would have liked to spend a little more time with the Prophet, with Ving Rhames. And I don't know if the folks that were in charge of making this movie would have had the talent to execute it. But if we'd spent a little time, there could be some of those subtle clues. So after you've seen what he is and you go back and watch it the second time, you're like, oh, I totally missed that, but I should have seen it. But I think they would have telegraphed any kind of clue that they tried to put in.
And it's very interesting how we have very little proselytizing from the Prophet. We don't hear a whole bunch.
I will say this. I agree with what you're saying, Sean, that it's very tap water in that, you can, if you're really pressed, say that tap water might be better from this faucet than it is from that faucet or something. But at the end of the day, very forgettable. But it's not boring. There's no point where I'm watching it and I just wanted it to be over.
I totally disagree with you.
I think they've got, for me at least, they've got some action. They've got some effects. Some of the good effects. Well, the bad effects aren't laughably bad. I'll just put it that way. The concept kind of struggles. I think they really had a hard time telling a story with it. I mean, but I wasn't bored. There's always something happening. There's always a direction you're going.
And that's the whole thing. That is the biggest problem with this movie, is that there is not a single thing that is surprising about this movie. There's not a twist or a turn where you're like, oh wow, at least there's that. There's not a single moment where you're like, oh hey, I wouldn't have thought of that. Oh, that's neat. There isn't a moment in this movie where you just think to yourself like, oh okay, yep. That they earn their money there with that. There's none of that.
It feels
there's
like
and
first
to
or
me
second
that is
draft.
the most boring thing in the world. Is that you can have okay effects, you can have okay acting, but it doesn't matter if nothing is surprising. I fell asleep twice trying to watch this movie.
I did have a couple of pauses and walked away, just like, well, I'm going to go stretch a little bit and, this, that, and the other. So I wasn't completely enthralled. But, while you're in the theater, you can't really.
I watched it straight through at home with no problem, which isn't something I'm always able to do these days. So I always felt like there was enough going on to kind of try to follow it. They put a tiny bit of mystery in it, though not a lot. And, I really liked the part where Bruce Willis's surrogate has the big action scene with the dreads where his arm gets blown off and there's some fighting there. And I liked it at the end when the lady's like leaping over whole cars and stuff. I really felt like it wasn't boring me at all.
Most of that's done pretty well. And
and that's my point. It's all okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you in that regard that it's not memorable, but it's also not some of those movies that are just feel like I'm looking at a picture instead of a motion picture sometimes.
Well, but to me, like I love when someone really shoots for the moon and it's terrible. I prefer that to this. And you guys know this about me at this point. Give me Cloud Atlas every single time versus this.
Boy.
You know, like there's something about Cloud Atlas where it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're going for that. That's cool. Oh, Holly Berry, one of the most beautiful women in the world, is playing an old Chinese man. Oh, all right, that's cool. You know, like they're at least with that, you're like, what are we doing? Why are we here right now? Like I like having those moments. Even in a movie that's terrible like Cloud Atlas, whereas something like this, if I can write out every plot detail, like a quick synopsis of what's going to happen in this movie, hand it over to someone else, we watch the movie, and at the end everything that I put there is there, that is not a good movie. That is an awful, boring movie. And yes, it's competently made.
Ooh, you could do a game of bingo
so
with
is
it.
a Saturn.
Man, I used to love Saturns. I had a Saturn SUV.
Hey, that Saturn Sky died before the company the company died before that Saturn Sky, which was like a good-looking car, and they were like, "Well, nope, that's it. You know, we made a nice, good-looking sports car. Now we're
the
closing
American
doors."
Miata.
No kidding.
But wow, I think we've covered like this plot in a lot of detail. They didn't talk much about the motivation for the dreads, which I don't know how I felt it. Like, couldn't they have come up with a better name than the dreads for the surrogate resistance movement?
Hello, the Prophet has dreads, Bruce. What are you, stupid or something? Boy, you call yourself a writer.
All about the haircut, huh?
Yeah, listen, if he would have had a buzz cut, it would have been the buzz cuts. Mohawks to Mohawks. I mean, it writes
If you're
itself.
going to call them the dreads, then like as part of their religion, because that's really what this boiled down to more than a political movement, they all should have had to have dreads. Like I want to see, the suburban red-haired dude with dreads and stuff like you do in the real world in a college town.
You guys ever, either one of you ever done any virtual reality stuff?
With dreads?
No, not with dreads, you idiot. Just
because I would love some virtual reality dreads I could wear.
I don't listen. That's a path we're not going down with you.
I've done no VR stuff. I don't have any kind of VR unit. I think at Dragon Con I played some games that are about like Fruit Ninja level VR games. That's about it.
Yeah.
I have never done any of the home VR stuff, but I have done like professional VR stuff.
It's just, I don't know, like to me with that, it always just seems like that could technically be a world that people really gravitate towards and kind of stick in. And, not to bring up Gamer again, but Gamer does a better job of doing that because these people are playing a game and not necessarily the rudimentary day-to-day lives. And I think that's one of the things that, really does hamper a lot of the things. It's like, I thought they could do this I saw one person doing it, but most of the people that were on the subway, when he's going back and everything, are sitting there. Who in their right mind would choose to sit in the subway with their robot on while it goes through? At least one of those people is like in one of the little containment units dealies in the subway. And that makes sense. Dock yourself, and then when you get to your destination, bing, will wake you up, and you just keep on rolling. Why would they just sit in that subway? That doesn't make any...
Well, the only thing I can understand about it is maybe they wanted to keep their senses turned on, so to speak. And perhaps they actually do get some kind of familiarity from sitting. I wouldn't say that it's any relief from fatigue or an energy thing, but if you have the sensations turned on, you're just in the habit of sitting, and the subways are already built with seats in them. So, why not use them and make the people that are in their fleshy bodies stand like a real jerk would?
That is an excellent point, though, Adam. That is an excellent question. It's almost like this movie is poorly written.
Like they didn't think things through. I like the whole movie does feel like a second draft for sure.
When my kids build their huge Minecraft castles, they always take time to put bathrooms and toilets in them, but they never take a dump in Minecraft. So I don't know. I think it's just something people enjoy doing.
You don't know what those monsters do. Those little monsters come in and poop in the night when you ain't looking.
Oh, man. Now I'm never playing Minecraft again.
No, not if you... Hey, it's nighttime.
Are your kids still into Minecraft, Bruce?
The youngest one is for sure.
Speaking of
all
which...
3 been in it at times.
Yeah, and then they just kind of grow out of it.
And like my 35-year-old cousin is really into it too. So,
wow.
Yeah, I think it has like what we call a biphasic distribution. Really young people and then adults get back into it that just like building stuff. It's like Legos without the foot trauma.
And just like Surrogates, Minecraft 10 years old this year.
Oh wow.
Same thing. They just had their 10-year anniversary this past week. So.
Oh, good job by them.
That they're making. They're doing okay over there. That Notch fella, he got himself a little bit of bread in that departure. Woo!
It's good. That's great because it's good to know that the plot of J-Pod turned out to be a real thing that worked. It's great.
But knowing the real world like we do, and knowing how technology always gets applied in the real world like we do, if the world of surrogates wanted to be more realistic, everyone would just be buying a surrogate that they could keep at home and do the stuff with. You know what I mean?
Why are you
That's what the
going
investment
to
would be.
work? If you have this, why are you going to work?
If you have
I just
this,
don't know.
You just got to make enough money so they don't repossess your sex bot.
So let's talk about
that's
that.
what the new world economy is.
Let's talk about that for a second. How much you figure that, we'll use today dollars, not future dollars. How much in today's dollars you figure one of these things cost? A, for base unit, because we do get into that a little bit. He just goes, look, all this has is speech and hearing. You want feelings, you're going to need to pay some extra money. How much for a base unit? How much for a full unit?
Yeah, he's right.
Talking
It's
the
cars.
world of cars. It's going to be almost exactly whatever the price of a car would have been in that future economy.
So you're like,
And
this
just
one's
like
got
cars,
wheels. It's
yeah, there are going to be some that have a a 5-year warranty, some that are refurbished. You're going to get some guy died as soon as he bought it, so you get a new one for the price of a used, but it's got the creepy factor that the guy was driving it when he died. It's going to get all that kind of stuff into it, but it's going to be just like cars.
But they did put a number into it.
It's like Dinger Zone, where what we were talking about on Dinger Zone today, where you can get the $40,000 Tesla, or you can get the $225,000 Tesla. It depends on where you're at. You can get the super sexy one, or you can get the one where you're like, oh, hey, I have a Tesla.
To find out how we started talking about Teslas, patreon.com/HMP. Boom. You're right. I think that's true. But it is interesting because they said when the big execution goes down and all that stuff, 1 billion people all had surrogates. So, we can estimate then a fifth of the world's population is on this train. I just want to know what kind of crazy Wi-Fi they're getting to where they can talk to all these bloody things at once. I can't even get 5 bars, walking down the street.
Well, just think of it. It's going to work on a technology similar to GPS, where the network doesn't send large amounts of data, but what it sends is crucial kind of thing. Because, how many cars have GPS running at once? It's going to be the same thing. How many cars have Sirius or XM radios running at once, or even a regular radio for that matter? I think it ends up being something like that.
Yeah, but are those necessarily, depending upon what you have and everything, are those super two-way for every, to that level? I wouldn't think so. But, that's the
everybody
future, so
has something in their pocket that is super two-way and has nearly unlimited data and is getting pretty good reception almost anywhere you are now. So, think of it as a cell phone encased in the body. Just think of it that way.
All right. That's fair.
Only you can't play Candy Crush on.
No Candy Crush. Oh, listen, you don't know what they do when they take their shirts off. We saw no robot shirtless in this, so who's to say?
Well, we did see surrogate makeout session. I was kind of curious, how far you can go, and also what's the point. It's there are video games like Leisure Suit Larry when I was growing up. There are video games where you can be a character who gets his naughty bits up against other people's naughty bits in a video game, but how fun is that really? So I kind of wanted to know if this surrogate on surrogate thing was actually wired into your brain so you had full sensation. What are they going for here? You know what I mean?
Well, do they have all their bits and pieces, are you asking?
Yeah. Not only do they have all their bits and pieces, even if they had just bar scanners and barcodes that could go up against each other and send that experience back.
What if it's plugging in a USB?
Playing with 2 G.I. Joe dolls where they get a little carried away with the wrestling, if you know what I mean.
They're just going at it. It's USB plug-in. That's all it is. You just plug one USB to one USB, and it's like, oh boy.
Because where are the surrogate brothels at?
Well, yeah. There's a lot of... I like the idea of the weapon. I will say that. I thought that was kind of a a neat little MacGuffin that they're kind of going after and everything. Again, I think a lot of this movie feels like a pretty solid first draft, but they really needed to get through and, massage it, take out the, crap and amp it up and, this level, a little more emotional payoff over here and things
oh, man.
Of that nature.
And not once did we compare it to Ready Player One versus the virtual space and the real space.
Trying to think about how at least there's like that one scene in Ready Player One that's like really, really good.
Oh, I like a lot of stuff about Ready Player One, but also it realizes that the future is going to be post-physical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they also have the cool looks. Like one person looks like a World of Warcraft orc, for example, and people are having unnatural hair colors and stuff like that.
They just look at them and just go like, "Oh, it's Gary."
And they had the obligatory shot. There's like one shot of 3 modified surrogates walking beside each other and not another one the whole movie. And that one shot just actually drug it down. Like, why are these people doing it and no one else? Like, I think you're better off putting either a lot of it in or none of it in, but not that weird one shot.
There wouldn't be that many vanilla surrogates out there. I think that you're right. I mean, people just look at people now. People look in their regular bodies will do just, the most unbelievable thing. You're like, wow, somebody did that. And they do it. If it had nothing to do with their body and only, their, trapper keeper, if you will, they're going to do whatever they want to it.
And, I don't know how much it would cost, but I think I've reconsidered. My surrogate would be Chris Farley in the Chippendale Dancer costume.
Can I say something? I just recently it was up as a suggested video on YouTube, and I was afraid to click on it because over the years, the music rights have lapsed and everything, and they put in another one, and it doesn't work if you don't have the right song in there. And I'll say this, the one that's on YouTube from SNL, correct music and everything, so I can watch that sketch again. Still hilarious.
It's like a before and after of my life watching that video.
I want to see you with that teased hair.
Oh, man, I was crazy about Swayze once.
No kidding. Oh, by the way, again, I don't know why it all comes around this time, but this is also the Roadhouse anniversary. Did you know that? That's also a case.
Oh, man. The cooler scene is the best.
Oh, man. I remember watching Roadhouse on HBO with one of my friends once, and my mom walked in during that one scene. You just don't want your mom to walk in.
Shirtless men smoking cigarettes, practicing karate?
If only. Because she was a bit of a Swayze fan, so she heard Swayze was on TV. She's going to come watch it. And then, boom, it's the scene. And oh, boy, you know the scene.
He said, pain don't hurt, Mama. It's okay. All right. Before we get down to our final grades here and everything, we have to ask ourselves one of the most important questions anyone can ever ask themselves about their life or anything else is how in the world does this movie relate back to Sylvester Stallone?
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Bruce Willis and Sylvester Stallone used to be friends until Bruce Willis asked for more than $1 million for working 2 days on Expendables 3. Phew. Sylvester Stallone very publicly went to Twitter, and I'm paraphrasing here, told him to go screw. Bruce Willis reminds me of Harrison Ford these days because the only reason why either of these guys do movies anymore is money. And there was a time when Bruce Willis was my favorite actor. He had a sense of humor, he could do action, and boy, could he act. He always had some issues, like when he was on the set of Die Hard with a Vengeance, and when a reporter asked him why movies cost so much, he said, because the crew costs so much. It's true, he did.
Oh, Lord.
Bruce himself was making upwards of $10 million for that movie, so when the crew got wind of his comments, one of the fine people who worked behind the scenes of that movie took the liberty of taking a giant dump on the hood of his car.
Nice.
Bruce Willis would then go on to make The Last Boy Scout. And from experience, let me tell you, to a teenage boy, it's the greatest movie ever made. The bad guy in that movie not only gets pushed off the side of a building, but he also falls into the spinning blades of a helicopter. No sequel for that guy. Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans get beat up by the inventor of Scrabble. Oh, what a wonderful movie to a 13-year-old boy. So to see Bruce Willis today and what he's turned into, making movies that seem to premiere in Redbox, barely performing in movies like Surrogates, and seeing him mentally going through boat catalogs in his head while acting, is like watching the later seasons of Arrested Development. It looks like the thing that you like, but it's actually a dead thing that shouldn't exist anymore. It makes me admire actors like Robert Redford all the more. When Redford got older, he didn't just hop from garbage movie to crap project because of the money that they paid him. He did projects that interested him. He directed. He built a film festival. And he would definitely never star in the movie The Whole 10 Yards. Maybe Bruce Willis will care again someday, and maybe he turns things around, but it's really weak sauce seeing him in garbage like this. And if I were a betting man, I'd take the under. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone Connection is Bruce Willis. Thank you. I'm Sean Koufax. Thank you.
I actually saw Robert Redford in a movie, I think it was last year, called the Old Man and the Gun. It was actually pretty good. But you're right, Robert Redford chooses those things a little bit more wisely. But he's a prickly fella. If you read a lot of the backstory about how all Sundance happened and stuff, it's a wild and crazy time, but it's good. All right, so let's get down to it. Here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the page, and while you're there, throw it a like. Why don't you? I'm throwing up little memes all the time because I've got nothing else better to do with my life. Bruce, what is your Robin rating for Surrogates?
Oh boy. Now the question is, how high can I push this rating? How high can I push this rating and not have everyone turn on me? Like there's a certain level where it's going to be capped. And after that, they're going to think I'm almost like insulting the movie by giving it a sarcastic high rating. And the thing is, I have to tread that tightrope carefully, because if we know one thing, we know that the Surrogates fandom out there is one that will turn on you and make your life
rabid.
If you say the wrong thing.
I think it's just you, Bruce.
Well, if it's just me, then I'm gonna go ahead and say it's just enjoyable enough to make this right on that gray area between Damian Wayne and Tim Drake for me.
All right, Sean, what do you got?
Jason Todd. This is absolute garbage. It's the worst thing we've seen all year. It's not even close. This is the worst of the worst, because at least when you see something that's crap, it's fun to watch because it's crap. This is not fun to watch. Thankfully, I will never have to see this thing again. Jason Todd.
Hey Bruce, do you think he didn't like this movie?
I'm good at hiding.
I just can't wait till Surrogates 2 comes out in 2022.
Are you super stoked? I'll just go on.
If they ever try to remake Surrogates, and I hope they do, at least there'll be an actor in it who isn't sleepwalking through it, and they might have an actual surprise in the movie.
I will say
Surrogates,
this.
the TV show on Epix 2022.
That might listen. A TV show for this might work better than a movie would. But you're right. Bruce Willis is just zombie walking his way through this movie. He does not. Again, it's just like, don't you have emotions? We've seen you have emotions in movies. We know that they're there. If you'd never done it before, it'd be a different story. But we've seen it happen. So it's very confusing as to why it doesn't work. But I think I'm obviously a little bit more with Bruce here. I don't think I'm going to go up quite that high, but this is in the Damian Wayne category for me. I think there's a lot of things here that were pretty interesting and certainly weren't super pervasive in our lives.
What's interesting about this movie?
I'm about to tell you.
Thing that's interesting.
I'm about to tell you, because back in 2009, we were not inundated with like social media and everything as we are today. And today, that is what people use as an escape for their lives, for something that they don't do. They don't communicate with humans anymore. They're only doing it via...
Are you trying to tell me, Adam, that you don't think that this whole thing is just an allegory for social media? Because that is exactly what this movie is.
Well, right, but it wasn't like 2009 and 2019 are still a very different swath of stuff in there. And listen, I've gone through things both with family members and other people that I've had relationships with, very close relationships with, that have been lost to things of this nature. Not necessarily social media per se, but online endeavors and things of that nature. And so I've literally seen stuff like this happen, and people not willing to go anywhere else and do anything else but the thing that they like doing and the thing that gives them joy. It's a type of drug in a way. It really is.
Hey, I've lost several South Korean friends to StarCraft.
These things happen. StarCraft kills people. We all know that. If you've read any of the literature, you know. But look, it's not a great movie. It's not as good as I remembered it Damian Wayne. But my guess is next week we're going to have, do want to say thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/HMP for killing the meme. You've done it. I hope you're proud of yourselves. Clearly, Sean's super happy about it.
Yeah, thanks.
But next week, everybody, we're headed back into the theater. And you're going, wait a minute, there's no Marvel movies out, no Spider-Man's coming. What are you talking about, Adam? We're going to go see the anti-Superman movie, Brightburn. It's produced by one James Gunn. I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy before. Pretty good. We're going to check that out next weekend. So, Bruce, in the meantime, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I want people to go on over to Amazon.com. I want you to look for, let's say, Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore. That's a book you can't go wrong with if you love fantasy. If instead of fantasy, you want something that's more dramatic and really tugs at the heartstrings, built in the real world, super gritty and realistic, look for Nerd Spawn Genesis. You're not going to find anything more noir than that.
Now, Sean, in a couple months, is there some television show that's hitting the airwaves that people might want to watch because we might be involved in something tangentially related to that program?
Not only one thing, but I think there's going to be two things, correct?
Eventually, yeah. Yeah. I don't know does the other one have a date yet?
Oh, you're talking about that Pennyworth on Epix?
No. Oh, my Lord.
One of them has an August 4th date, but that's not Pennyworth on Epix. I got to get back to you on that one.
No, okay, we'll figure out what the other one is. But we got two new podcasts coming down the pipe and not too awful long here, so keep a lookout on that. But Preacher, right?
Right. One of them is Preacher, which I am not looking forward to the fourth season. I'm not going to be as angry as I am this week because it's more of like sad. Like, man, we're on the fourth season.
Hey, by the way,
it's still not where I want it to be. And you
know what
like
popped up in my timeline today, Sean?
What?
The anniversary of our trip to New York to see that Preacher premiere.
New York trip.
Not too bad. I was just like, man, today's just kind of like it was popping off all these remembrances and stuff. It's pretty cool.
That's cool because you know what I just found out recently too is that because I took the train from New York to Philadelphia because I had to go to a wedding, and literally everyone who I have said this to, I'm sorry, I just found this out. There's like 3 or 4 people, and when I bring this up, and they go, "Oh, you took the best train you can possibly take," because the train from New York City to Philadelphia is like an awesome ride, and it doesn't take very long, and there's no stops. It's like directly to Philly.
That's where all the Roots dudes do. I don't know if they ride the train, but they make that commute every week.
And man, I'll tell you, like my experience on that train, it was like, man, this is even better than taking a plane because a plane would have taken longer to get there.
Huh. Yeah, with all the taxiing and stuff, I'd imagine. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was great.
So head to New York City, everybody. Don't know if you've heard of it. New York City. Check it out.
New York City to Philly.
That's where my salsa's made.
New York City. All right, everybody. That is it for this week. Join us next week for Brightburn. For Sean Koufax, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Eve.